The night everything shifted began quietly, almost too quietly. The kind of silence that feels like a warning you don't know how to read yet. And I remember sitting on the couch, staring at the door, waiting for him to come home, rehearsing in my head the same gentle questions I always asked. How was work? Did you eat? Like a woman trying to hold onto a relationship that was already slipping through her fingers. And when he finally walked in, late again and smelling like a cologne that didn't belong to him, he kissed my forehead like a man returning to a pillow, not a partner. And I felt my lungs tighten even before I knew why. But the real hit came during dinner, when he sat there scrolling through his phone like I was invisible, like the life we'd built together was some background noise he had grown bored of. And then, out of nowhere, he looked up at me, his expression flat, unreadable, and he said the sentence that still echoes in my head like a dull blade. I told everyone I'm single at work. It's easier that way. And in that moment, I swear I felt something inside me crack, because he didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't explain beyond a lazy shrug and a dismissive, "Babe, relax, it avoids complications," as if erasing me publicly was just a minor inconvenience, a social detail he could adjust for comfort. I remember staring at him, hearing my heartbeat pounding in my ears, wondering how a man who slept beside me every night could introduce himself to the world like he was alone. And that night, when he rolled over in his sleep and wrapped his arm around me, I felt nothing but distance, like I was sharing a bed with a stranger wearing my boyfriend's face. And I slipped out from under his arm, walked to the living room, and opened my laptop with trembling hands, not to stalk him, not to plan revenge, but because I needed answers, clarity, anything that made sense. And I realized something terrifying. The moment a woman starts doubting the man she loves, she begins noticing everything. The late nights that never added up, the sudden gym obsession, the new clothes, the secretive texts, the way he guarded his phone like it held the last piece of his loyalty. And in that dim living room with the clock blinking 2:13 a.m., I felt the truth crawling toward me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was intention. And if he could pretend he was single out there, then maybe he already was in here. And that was the night I understood something every woman eventually learns the hard way. When a man hides you, it's because he's already revealing himself to someone else.
The next morning, I woke up with that sick, heavy feeling in my chest, the kind you get when reality finally catches up to you. And he was already dressed for work, moving around the room like nothing had happened, humming softly, checking his hair in the mirror. And for a moment, I just watched him, trying to understand how a man could walk so calmly after detonating the truth the night before. And he glanced at me with that same careless confidence that made everything inside me twist, saying, "Don't overthink yesterday, okay? It's not a big deal," before leaning down to kiss me. And when I subtly turned my face away, he didn't even notice. That hurt more than anything else. The ease with which he dismissed my feelings, the assumption that I would just swallow my pain and move on. And after he left, the door clicking shut felt less like a goodbye and more like a warning shot. I sat there in the silence, breathing too fast, replaying the past few months in my head like puzzle pieces I had ignored. The nights he came home smelling different, the sudden lockdown he put on his phone, the text notifications he cleared before I could even blink, the way he angled his body away from me when he typed, as if loyalty was something fragile he had to hide. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that pretending to be single wasn't the beginning, it was the confession hidden in plain sight. So I did what any woman with a bruised heart and a sharp mind would do. I watched, observed, paid attention, and suddenly the patterns became obvious. The new coworker he mentioned a little too casually, the inside jokes he claimed I wouldn't get, the sudden gym sessions at odd hours, the pictures he took of himself but never posted, and his favorite excuse, "It's just work, babe," which now sounded like a rehearsed script more than a truth. By noon, anger replaced confusion and something in me clicked. Not the desire for revenge yet, but the desire for clarity, dignity, self-respect. The realization that I deserved answers, not breadcrumbs. So I grabbed my jacket, walked to his office building, and waited in the lobby pretending to scroll on my phone, my heart hammering as employees passed by. And then I heard it. One woman laughing with her friend, pointing to a picture on her phone saying, loud enough for the universe to hear, "He's cute, right? And he's single." And I swear my soul left my body for a second because she was talking about him. She was talking about my boyfriend, the man who slept in my bed, the man who looked me in the eyes and said, "I love you." And I realized he wasn't just pretending to be single for convenience. He was advertising it. I felt my eyes burn, but I didn't cry because something else rose up inside me, something sharper, steadier, colder. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was awake. I walked out of that building with one thought pulsing through me. If he wants the world to see him as single, then I'm going to make sure he feels the consequences of losing the woman who actually loved him. And for the first time in weeks, the heaviness in my chest didn't feel like pain. It felt like the beginning of a plan. That evening, when he came home, acting normal as always, tossing his keys on the counter and asking, "What's for dinner?" like he wasn't living a double life, something inside me shifted completely. Not into anger, not into heartbreak, but into a quiet, controlled clarity that felt more powerful than anything I'd ever experienced. And I answered him calmly, almost sweetly, because men like him never see the storm when it doesn't come with thunder. He sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone again, smiling at messages he wouldn't dare show me. And while he was lost in whatever fantasy he was feeding at work, I walked to the bedroom, opened our drawer, and pulled out every important thing I ever handled for him. His documents, his receipts, his laundry, his chores. And I realized how much of his life I made easier while he made mine feel smaller. The realization hit me like cold water. I'd been treating him like a partner, and he'd been treating me like an option. Later that night, he showered, sprayed that new cologne, and told me he had a late-night team call. And I simply nodded, letting him believe I was the same soft girl who took his excuses without protest. He left with that fake confidence he carried everywhere, and the moment the door closed, I unlocked the plan that had been forming all day. Not revenge born out of spite, but revenge born out of truth. I opened my laptop and started gathering everything. Screenshots of his late-night texts I had caught glimpses of, photos from his gallery backups, notes of every lie he told in the last month, even the timestamps that never matched. Not because I wanted to confront him, but because I wanted to end this with precision. You don't stab in the dark when you've been wounded in the light. I thought of the girl from his office, the one calling him cute and single, and for a moment, jealousy tried to bite me, but it didn't last because this wasn't about another woman. This was about the man who kept choosing deception over decency. Around midnight, he came back home with that overconfident smile, smelling fresher than someone who supposedly attended a meeting, and he tried to be affectionate, sitting beside me on the bed, sliding his hand around my waist, saying, "Why are you so quiet today?" And I wanted to laugh because, of course, he noticed my silence more than my suffering. But instead of reacting, I looked at him with a softness he didn't deserve and said, "I'm just tired." And the way he relaxed instantly, like my exhaustion was easier for him than my suspicion, told me everything about how little he truly knew me. He fell asleep fast, snoring lightly, holding onto my pillow like he owned the space, and I watched him for a long moment, not with love, not with hate, but with finality. The next morning, I woke up earlier than him, sitting by the window, letting the sunrise hit my face as I thought about the woman I used to be before him, confident, warm, trusting, and how he chipped away at her piece by piece, not with one big betrayal, but with small, consistent disrespect. He eventually woke up and asked why I was awake so early, and I simply smiled and said, "Just thinking about things." And that was the first time I felt powerful in months, Because the truth was, he had no idea how close he was to losing access to the life he took for granted. As he rushed to work, adjusting his shirt, fixing his hair, checking his phone for messages that likely weren't from me, he kissed my cheek and said, "Love you," casually, like it was punctuation, not a promise. And I let him walk out the door knowing something he didn't. By the time he came home tonight, nothing in this house would belong to him the way it used to. Not my silence, not my trust, not my future, and definitely not me. And as the door clicked shut behind him, the fear I had felt for days finally melted away, replaced with a calm certainty. He wanted the world to think he was single, and I was finally ready to give him exactly what he'd been pretending to be.
The day I finally left him didn't look dramatic. No screaming, no plates breaking, no cinematic storm outside. It was quiet, almost peaceful. And that's how I knew I was done. Because real endings don't come with fire. They come with clarity. I spent the morning packing my things with slow, steady hands, folding clothes he never noticed I wore, collecting cosmetics he never complimented, and pulling down the photos on the wall, the ones where he smiled like he meant it, although now I could see the small emptiness in his eyes that I kept trying to fill. I left the apartment spotless, not because I cared, but because I wanted him to walk into a silence so sharp it would slice through every lie he ever told. Before leaving, I placed a neatly written letter on the dining table. No anger, no insults, just truth. The kind he never had the courage to offer me. And I wrote one simple line that I knew would hit him harder than any shouting match ever could. You told everyone you were single, so now you are. I locked the door behind me, returned the key to the landlord's box, and walked out without looking back. Because women only look back when part of them wants to stay, and I had nothing left in me that belonged to him. Halfway down the street, my phone buzzed. Him calling, then calling again, then again, because men like him always wake up only when they lose the comfort they took for granted. And I let the phone ring out each time, not out of pettiness, but because I no longer owed him the emotional labor of explaining the consequences of his own choices. By afternoon, his text switched from confused, "Where are you?" to annoyed, "Why are you acting crazy?" to panicked, "Please talk to me, babe, please." And I didn't reply to a single one, because silence was the only language left between us. Hours later, he rushed to my friend's place, where I was safely staying, and when he saw me, his face fell in a way I had never seen before. Fear, mixed with realization. And he said my name with a softness he never used when he had me. But soft voices don't heal deep wounds. So I looked at him with calm eyes and said, "You don't get to erase me in public and keep me in private." And his expression shattered because he understood exactly what I meant. He tried everything, excuses, apologies, promises he didn't know how to keep. But when trust dies, love becomes an echo, and I wasn't going to live inside an echo for the rest of my life. He begged me to come home, to talk, to start over, but the truth was simple. I didn't want a man who needed to lose me to realize my value. A man who performs love privately, but performs single publicly, isn't a partner. He's a liability. So I walked away from him. And he didn't follow this time, because he knew it was over, really over. The kind of ending you feel in your bones rather than your heart. The next few weeks were hard, of course. He posted sad quotes, drunk-dialed me, tried to use mutual friends to get updates. But I kept my distance, focusing on rebuilding myself piece by piece. And slowly, peace replaced pain, confidence replaced doubt, and I started recognizing the woman in the mirror again. Months later, I heard from a friend that the office girl, the one he had been trying so hard to impress, lost interest the moment she found out about his lies, and he ended up with neither of us, which felt like the universe delivering a poetic ending without me lifting a finger. And that's when it hit me. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reclamation.
reclaiming your dignity, your peace, your self-worth. And by leaving him, by choosing myself, I took back everything he tried to dim in me. And sometimes the most powerful revenge a woman can have is simply becoming the woman he will never have access to again.